With all 96 tracks released in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and the Booster Course Pass, it's finally time to rank every single one to find out definitively which track is best. To do that, I sat down and replayed all of them, and based on visuals, layout, shortcuts, and just how satisfying they were to race through, I gave each one a very specific spot as better than this track, but not as good as this track. And when I got to the end, the final number scores were assigned. Now, this list is very biased to my own taste. It's kind of impossible to be objective with a list like this, so I invited Mankalor, the king of Mario Kart item smuggling, to give me a hand with this.
Hey everybody, glad to be on here. So as Jeremy said, I'm gonna be here to comment on some of his spicier takes. Now, of course, I'm not going to be moving stuff around since this is Jeremy's list after all, so I'm just going to be here in the background and silently judging your opinion, Jeremy. So, I'll be back later in the video. Thanks for having me on, Jeremy, and take it away.
96, 3DS Toad Circuit, the worst track in the game, and it's pretty easy to see why. The layout's boring, the aesthetic of starter course doesn't work when it's not the first course, and it probably has less detail than any other track. In all fairness, it was kinda doomed from the start, because it wasn't very good in Mario Kart 7. But it hurts even more when you realize this Toad course was picked over Toad's Factory. Come on, man! 95, Toad's Turnpike. Let's keep it going with the Toad courses. This one has almost the exact same shape as Circuit, but it gets slightly more credit because at least the traffic gives you something to watch out for. 94, Baby Park. You either love it or you hate it, and I don't love it. I play Mario Kart more for the precise driving, and while I appreciate the chaotic element that items bring, making that the focal point of a track is a recipe for disaster. It has its place, and I'm glad it's in the game, but it's one I'll never choose to play. 93, Moo Moo Meadows. This one was lame on Wii, and it's lame in this remake. I like the added glider ramp at the end, but that's the only change, and it's got the most bland aesthetic in the game. Ooh, a cow farm. I wonder what'll be outside.
You're gonna find cows outside.
92, Dry Dry Desert. This track is certified very dry. Its only gimmick, if you can even call it that, is the sand pit, but it doesn't add sh**. 91, Mario Kart Stadium. For the first track in the game, it's perfect. It feels like an under-the-lights primetime event. The night sky with the beautiful cityscape and fireworks makes for a glorious set. But at the end of the day, and as someone who's been playing this game for almost 10 years now, there's not much reason to go back to the introductory stage. 90, Calamari Desert. I know it's a fan favorite, but I've never really been a fan. The change to lap 2 is admittedly awesome, getting to drive through a previously closed off portion is dope, but looking at what's here and not how much better it is, it's a straightforward and plain feeling desert track, and I'm sorry, but it just doesn't stack up that well against the rest of these. 89, Choco Mountain. Layout-wise, it's not that bad, and the falling rock part at the end is actually pretty distinct. But when the entire color palette is brown and browner, and the sky is so damn foggy, it brings my enjoyment racing through way the hell down. 88, Excite Bike Arena. Just an oval with a bunch of ramps.
That just sounds like
Baby Park
with extra steps.
It is pretty neat that the ramp placement changes every time you play, but it's really not that noticeable. 87.
Was that the...
Nope, too predictable, I'm better than that. 8 Mario Circuit. It's a great showcase for the zero gravity mechanic, and the music slaps. But outside of that, it's an 8 for Mario Kart 8, in the Mach 8. I ate a Switch cartridge and it was nasty. 8, E6, Tokyo Blur. This one has a great tune, and I've always thought Tokyo was a slick-looking town. But the course itself is undoubtedly the worst of the city tracks. For starters, where most of those have 3 somewhat varying laps that take you through different landmarks, all 3 laps here feel mostly the same, and take you across different sections of bridge. Whoop-de-frickin'-do. 85, Paris Promenade. I think it's slightly better than Tokyo, but these Wave 1 city tracks were really not all that. So many straightaways and sections with literally nothing happening. It's a very monotonous race. 84, Berlin Byways. Probably the most forgettable city track. The Womp Wall is kinda cool, but outside of that, it's the most visually and structurally generic of the bunch, and I always forget it's even in the game. It does have traffic to avoid, but it feels like it's only there to supplement the lack of fun turns. Pretty much the antithesis of 83, SNES Mario Circuit 3. This one's got a ton of really smooth feeling turns, but it's so flat visually and literally, while also being notorious for bagging. 82, London Loop. Okay, I get it. London's always cloudy, but it still makes the course feel so dreary, and the music just doesn't vibe with me. The chain chomps made it a little bit better, and it's cool he gets unleashed in the 3rd lap, but it doesn't save this otherwise mid-course. 81, Water Park. As just the 2nd track in the game, it's very easy, and the water park theming could have been taken way farther as like a Star Cup track. But as it is, it's solid. 80, Sky High Sunday.
It's
Oval.
Again.
Major letdown when they said we were getting a brand new track made for Mario Kart 8 and we got this. But retrospectively, it's not that bad. Is it weird that these railings boost you but don't have bumpers? Yes. Does it look like compared to the base game? You betcha. But the floatier mechanics and constant zero gravity do at the very least make it stand out. 79. Royal Raceway. This is another simple one, but I've always liked it. Racing outside Peach's castle with all the blooming cherry blossoms is just beautiful. And while there's more straightaways than I'd like, it's still fun as hell to race around. 78. Rock Mountain. Half the track is falling with style, and the other half is climbing back up this rocky cliffside. I do appreciate the different glider routes you can take throughout the race. That bumped it up some spots, but they definitely could have done more with it, and it's still not very engaging. 77. Sunset Wilds. Where do I even start? This was one of the most requested Super Circuit tracks, but they underdelivered here, man. The whole gimmick was that the sun would slowly set as you raced around the track, and by the end it'd be nighttime. But in this remake, there's no such progression, and that strips it of its whole identity. Without that, it's just another dry-ass retro course. 76. SNES Rainbow Road. One of the most overrated tracks in the game. Not to say it's bad, there is a beauty in its simplicity, but I can't choose a course like this over some of the other much more complete and exhilarating tracks this game has to offer. That's not a knock on this, more so a compliment to how stacked the rest of this lineup is. 75. Amsterdam Drift. This one incorporates underwater sections really creatively, and it makes it stand out quite a bit from the other city tracks. Besides that, it's pretty run-of-the-mill, but it is a step in the right direction. 74. Sherbet Land. On GameCube, this was kind of a flop for me, but just like Amsterdam, the underwater paths they added make it a lot more interesting and give it a little more complexity. 73. Cheap Beach. This one captures the beach vibe flawlessly and is just a laid-back, enjoyable track. 72. Daisy Circuit. A really nice looking track with a really lackluster layout. The only part of the original that stood out to me was the shortcut at the beginning, but now there's a sign blocking it, which pretty much eliminates it as a shroomless cut. If you hit it without one, you spin out and leave it wide open for everyone else's benefit, so it's been heavily nerfed, and that's really the only fun part of the layout, so... 71. Donut Plains. One of the best Super Nintendo restorations in the game, and the abundance of grass cuts that are both shroomless and not is an actual treat. 70. GBA Mario Circuit. It's got a super generic aesthetic, but it always seems to be a fun race online, and the second half shortcuts push it way up. Seriously, this glider cut is so much fun. 69.
Nice.
Sky Garden, the course of missed potential. This was like the best track in Super Circuit, and a damn good one in DS, but this version is kinda oversimplified and feels really short. Also, the shortcuts aren't all that anymore. The leaf one at the beginning hardly saves time, if any, and the small cut at the end is pretty much the same story. It looks a lot better, I'll give it that, but honestly, the fan recreation in Mario Kart Wii that I played was done better. I still like this one though, don't get me wrong. 68. Daisy Cruiser. The idea of turning a cruise ship into a racetrack is a really fun one, and the Goomba-filled pool and sliding tables in the dining area give it some very distinct charm. However, it's not all that satisfying to actually drive through. Half the track is a straightaway across the top of the ship, and the rest is solid, but not special. 67. Merry Mountain. This is one of the nicest looking tracks in the Booster Course Pass. The way the colorful brick pathway illuminates from the surrounding Christmas lights is stunning, and the drive up the mountain is really good. But the final stretch is just a linear downhill sprint for the finish line, and it really brings it down overall. Definitely style over substance, just like 66 and 64 Rainbow Road. Again, a visual spectacle. The music feels so grandiose, and the texture of the rainbow itself fits the vibe perfectly, but actually driving it is just kinda okay, and having no shortcuts doesn't help its case. Definitely a big improvement from the original though. 65. Moonview Highway. I was pretty high on this one at first, but after the hype of getting another Wii track wore off, I realized the layout's really straightforward. There's some fun branching routes at the beginning of the lap, but other than that, it's mostly riding a bunch of boost pads and avoiding traffic. Nothing special at all, and honestly, I might have it too high. 64. Yoshi Valley. This one's notorious for having more paths than any other course, and I like it for that. But let's all be honest here, half the routes are completely pointless and just take way too long, so once you find the fastest one, that's the only one you're going to use, so it's not as crazy as it seems. 63. Snowland. They gave this GBA course an awesome makeover, and the smaller intended shortcuts at the end of the race feel nice, but that broken one that cuts off like half the racetrack kinda ruins it online, and makes it very popular to bag on. 62. Madrid Drive. A solid-ass city track. A lot of it feels pretty familiar, but the soccer field with the boot Goombas from Mario 3 is an amazing touch, and the landmarks like the museum and shopping mall you drive through make each lap vary quite a bit. 61. Boo Lake. We needed a retro-style ghost course in the game, and while I would have preferred SNES Ghost Valley 2, the one that came back in Wii, this one came out great. It's simplistic, but the way they got the actual lake involved is sweet, and the shortcut in the middle is tough to pull off and feels really good. 60. Wario Stadium. A less good Waluigi Stadium. No, it's a really solid one, doesn't do anything exceptionally, but it's a very well-rounded course, though the lack of shortcuts is pretty disappointing. 59. Peach Gardens. Not one I would pick to return, but you know, it's alright. It's got grass cuts galore, but not much you can really do shroomless, and they don't feel all that satisfying to pull off. I like that the hedges were changed to Mario characters, and it's cool they changed the third lap to go around the other way, but those don't do enough to make this one very worthwhile. 58. New York Minute. A track based on one of my favorite cities, and visually, they did it justice. Making it a nighttime track was definitely the right call. All the lit up skyscrapers with the giant bright colored billboards full of different Mario references is a treat to drive through. Really missed an opportunity by not showing the Nintendo New York store, especially since you drive right through Rockefeller, but maybe Nintendo's humble after all. Seriously though, this track is gorgeous, and I really want to put it higher, but as an actual racetrack, it's not all that. 57. Shroom Ridge. It's not much to look at, just an average road course. But it's got some quality turns, avoiding traffic feels natural, and the shortcuts all being shroom dependent at least makes sense. 56. Rome Avanti. The aesthetic won me over when I first played it. A nighttime city track showing all these ancient ruins is sick. I thought it was like Athens Dash, but for the cool kids. But after that initial charm wore off, I realized the actual course is just okay. I like how they incorporated some of the more obscure Mario enemies, and it's certainly one of the better city tracks, but it's still just that. Unlike 55, Neo Bowser City. Not a city track. This one debuted in Mario Kart 7, and I've always loved the concept. A Bowser track that doesn't take place in one of his castles. Instead, it's pouring rain in this super vibrant, futuristic Bowser City, which looks like something straight out of Ratchet Clank. The layout's nothing crazy innovative, but there's tons of twists and turns, and the glider shortcut between laps is satisfying as hell. 54. Bone Dry Dunes. The most overhated course in the game. I know desert theming isn't all that interesting, but making it themed around Dry Bowser is actually really clever. From the red sands reminiscent of Mario Odyssey before Mario Odyssey, to the bone piranha plants and dry bones walking the course, and especially the zero-gravity wall of ribs you drive across, this one feels super different. It's also got another glider shortcut that's really unique and fun to use. Most tracks just have you free fall after a glider ramp, so when you get some actual options, I gotta acknowledge it. 53. Vancouver Velocity. The scenery here is beautiful. The snowy evergreens and warmly lit buildings give it a huge Pacific Northwest feel, and the hockey rink makes it seem more Canadian, eh? The layout is a boot average, sorry. The layout's pretty average, but I would not call it flat. There's tons of bumps and elevation shifts that feel really natural, and make sure it's fresh from start to finish. 52. LA Laps. This one captures that summertime Los Angeles vibe to a T. You got the beach with Santa Monica Pier, and you fly over the Dodger Stadium, but you don't go through LA's most iconic district, Hollywood. Instead, you drive through the Inglewood oil fields, because that's more iconic than the film capital of the world, sure. You could have driven across the stars at Hollywood Boulevard, maybe through a fictional set for the Mario movie, or have interacted with the Hollywood sign in some fun way. Point is, they could have been way more creative with it, but even still, it's better than a lot of the other city tracks. 51. DS Mario Circuit. It's another really standard theme, being Mario Circuit, but that aside, there's a plethora of super tight turns, fun shortcuts, and stage hazards. The fireballs are actually timed really well to screw you over, and the wiggler that storms out of nowhere in lap 3 is a welcome addition. 50. Twisted Mansion. I've never really liked this one, but I gotta give it some respect. Visually, it looks gritty and dare I say, scary, and it's got a bunch of creative, spooky ideas, making it the most interesting ghost track Mario Kart's ever seen. 49. Sweet Sweet Canyon. Now this is how you do a dessert track. Traffic cones replaced with ice cream cones, a donut you can speed through for a shortcut, wafer windmills, and little gingerbread toads in the crowd cheering you on. It's another pretty easy one, but with the sweets vibe, it's definitely fitting. And that's the line. The bottom 48 tracks have been put in their place and we're officially halfway through. If you disagree with me on any of these so far, go ahead and drop the video a like while you're leaving your reasons in the comments. And while you're doing that, I gotta know, Mankalor, how am I doing so far?
I do agree with quite a lot of your bottom 48 so far, though I do have a few comments on a few of the tracks. I'll go in order of appearance. Dry Desert is one of those tracks where you think I, as an item smuggler, would rank, like, really high on a list, but actually, it's not really my go-to bagger nowadays. The track isn't very friendly to Bullet Bill since there's not really any significant extension areas, and also, the really big shortcut requires either a golden mushroom or a star. I'd rather pick a track that has better at Bullet Bill extension areas, and has shortcuts that only require one mushroom. Some of those being Cheeseland or Mario Circuit 3. For Berlin Byways, I find it to be one of the most memorable city tracks in the game. It is a bit odd that it's the only city track with moving cars, but the music is absolutely amazing, and I just love how the locations in Berlin are implemented into the track, like the train station and the Womps in the Berlin Wall. And one chaotic part of the track that I really like is when the track loops in on itself and crosses over right before the start of lap 3. It just results in some hilarious interactions. Now going back to the topic of bagging tracks, Snowland is one of my favorites. The big gap jump is really satisfying to pull off, and only requires one mushroom, so there's been times where I've in last place and then automatically jump up to second or third place, or even first, just by taking the gap jump, and I have a star or even a lightning bolt in first place. Also, it's fun to kill the penguins. Yeah, that's how I played Mario 64. Now I just talked about an ice track, so on to another ice track, and by that, I mean New York Minute. Yeah, for whatever reason, this track feels a lot slicker to drive on than on Snowland or even a lot of the other ice tracks in the game. I get the road is wet because it rained before the race started, but it's why is the track so slippery like this? To where you just get slid and thrown around into walls and Goombas, it's ridiculous. Plus, most of the track is comprised of 90-degree turns with not really much variation, aside from the Central Park Zoo and going under Rockefeller Plaza Center. Honestly, they could have done better with New York. Bone Dry Dunes is one of those tracks where I want to but there's some odd track design issues that make me not really like it. The split paths of the bony piranha plants are really bumpy, and it makes your cart not stick to the road at all, so you may try to drift through this turn, but you'll end up getting sent wide for whatever reason. If you don't get caught between the rock and the pipe, this road splits yet again, but the anti-gravity section is way faster. I'm pretty sure the left path is intended for you to jump off the sand geyser so you can get to the upper path at the end for an extra item box, but you can still just reach the top path anyway, just by gliding off the right-hand side on the anti-gravity section. For Mario Kart 8's take on a desert track, I feel like it has good ideas, but not very good execution. So those are my takes on some of the tracks in the bottom 48 so far. You're doing a great job, Jeremy, so go ahead and take the mic back before I eat mine again.
Great stuff, Mank. You bring up some excellent points. And honestly, it's great to hear a bagger's perspective on a lot of these tracks, because I am not good enough to play like that, so your unique insight is very much appreciated. But we've still got 48 tracks to go, so let's keep moving. 48, Koopa Cape, one of my favorites from Wii, and seeing it announced for this game was super hype. But after playing it, I was honestly underwhelmed, and I can't quite put my finger on exactly why. The course does feel a lot more narrow and small, which goes against the grand waterfall feel it's supposed to have, but it could also be because the tunnel part's just way too easy now. They got rid of the spinning electric beams, and now there's just bumpers, which makes it so much less stressful down there. I still like it, but I'll admit it doesn't translate that great, and maybe I'm giving it too much credit. 47, Rosalina's Ice World. This one's basically a prettier Sherbet Land. The atmosphere here is astonishing, and it captures the Comet Observatory's cozy feel really well. The course itself has a couple path options and a new shortcut right at the end for an added dose of chaos. 46, Tick-Tock Clock. This one takes the concept of a level inside of a clock from Mario 64 and runs with it. From the gears you drive on to the pendulums you're avoiding and the clock hands you can cut across to save time, everything fits the theming perfectly. Also, seeing a level from Mario 64 get turned into a Mario Kart track got me thinking, why don't we get more Mario stages turned into tracks? Imagine New Donk City, the actual Comet Observatory, or maybe the inside of Peach's Castle, with little paintings you can choose to glide through with smaller routes inspired by levels in 64. Now I'm just brainstorming here, but tell me that doesn't sound awesome. 45, Riverside Park. When I say they brought this one to life, I mean they brought it to life. More so than most other retros. The lighting in this one, mixed with the deep jungle atmosphere, complete with a waterfall you get to burst through right at the end, gives this one A+ environment building and A+ flow. 44, Super Bell Subway. Converting public transport into an interesting racetrack could not have been an easy task, but this one came out really freaking good. Avoiding trains is a nice change of pace from the usual traffic courses, and I love all the options you have once you get in the tunnel. It's very open, with nice alternate routes to take you over the trains or even onto them. And what better way to finish things off than with a good old-fashioned grass cut right at the end. 43, Sydney Sprint. This one has to have the most joyful atmosphere of any of the city tracks. You're driving past an amusement park with all these cool rides, the track itself has these fun ramp pieces to trick off of, gliding through the Opera House feels so good, and the frickin' music. I've listened to it so many times at this point, but it sets up such an upbeat and exciting tone from the very start, and makes me enjoy this one way more than I probably should. 42, Singapore Speedway. Look, if a city track takes place at night, it's automatically better, and this one might have the most unique feel of them all. It starts off setting a standard by shooting you up to a skyscraper's rooftop swimming pool, then letting you glide back down over a soccer field and back to the city streets. It's full of elevation changes and gliding sections that give you options, and that song absolutely slaps. The only downside, and why I might have this low, is that there's multiple points where it's just a flat, straight road with nothing going on. I felt it more here than a lot of the other city tracks, and while the highs are a lot higher than most of those dead moments really hurt what could have been. 41. Electrodrome. Visually, this one's in the top 20. It feels like a full-on night rave, and every little detail in the background fits it to a T. I already said to a T, didn't I? The structure is where it's kind of lackluster. There's just not much going on, and sure, the paths do split, but they just mirror each other, and it's not as compelling as it looks. 40. Wario's Gold Mine. Probably the best concept for a Wario course. The man's greedy, and the idea of him owning his own frickin' mine, with all these Shy Guys working for him with their little pickaxes, it just works so well. Part of what made it so great on Wii was the difficulty, and since the carts at the end don't hurt anymore, and instead actually speed you up, it's certainly nerfed, but the visual upgrades more than justify it. This is a classic, and I'm glad it's here. 39. Grumble Volcano. A simple idea that's executed beautifully. It feels like you're constantly in fiery danger, with all the fire snakes jumping around, giant balls of fire falling from the sky, and the literal ground falling out beneath you into smoldering lava. Honestly, that is such a cool gimmick, and it fits this stage perfectly. 38. Cheeseland. Such a great recreation. It doesn't even feel like the same track, in the best possible way. There's so many shortcuts, and they're all really satisfying to pull off. And some of them are still pretty effective shroomless, so...
Extra credit.
Also, how many tracks are made of cheese? Checkmate. 37. 8 Rainbow Road. Unlike the rest of the Rainbow Roads in the game, this one's pretty challenging. These courses were supposed to be the hardest in their respective games, and the older ones coming back kinda lost that. The turns at the beginning are super tight and always seem to send me flying off the track. The space station you fly onto is super unique, and with the ending section being split and the best route requiring you to hop between paths, it's one of the hardest courses in the game, and it deserves some respect for that. 36. Waluigi Pinball. Another awesome premise for a track, because not only do you race through a pinball machine, but Waluigi. All the wacky twists and turns at the start of the track while you're trying to avoid a giant pinball is an S-tier section, but once you hit the part with the bumpers, you just stay straight for like 10 seconds. Also, there's no shortcuts, so there's not much of a skill ceiling. That being said, this is still a phenomenal track and one of the best from DS. 35. Mushroom Gorge.
Whoa, 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 whoa. You have Gorge this high up?
Well, yeah, it's frickin' Mushroom Gorge. I thought everyone loved this track.
Honestly, Gorge is one of my least favorite tracks in the game. While the gap jump is really satisfying to pull off, the track heavily revolves around nailing that. If you get struck by lightning, Boo takes your mushroom, or you simply didn't pull a mushroom in the first place, then you're not taking the shortcut. And then when you do try it, sometimes you feel like you have the right setup, but it just still doesn't work. And then there are the bouncy mushrooms. If you use a star or a mushroom, you may end up overshooting one mushroom and land between the other. To account for this weird track design, Nintendo implemented a feature where if you're airborne while bouncing off a mushroom, holding down the brake button will stop all of your forward momentum. It can sometimes come in and help you, but they probably should have not even needed to do this in the first place if the mushrooms were spaced out properly. Also, they didn't even remix the song for the track. Like, I get it, it's already a nice song, but come on, I would have liked to hear the Mario Kart 8 band's take on this. Okay, that's enough ranting about Gorge. Back to the video, sorry.
No dude, you're all good. Those are all valid points. I've probably got it too high, but my nostalgia for this one is way too high. And even though that gap does screw me over more than it helps me, I still like trying it, and it's a classic shortcut that I'm really glad is back in Mario Kart 8. I'm gonna leave it up here, but I'll put a fat asterisk next to it because I'm probably wrong on it. 34. Wild Woods. They went all out to build a natural and fresh environment, and they absolutely nailed it. You're driving up and down a tree, flying through a Shy Guy village that's built into it, racing through rushing water, and tricking off lily pads. It feels like after every turn there's something new to see, and though it seems like a simple concept, what we have here is anything but. 33. Athens Dash. The most distinct architecture of any of the city tracks. Racing along these ancient grand ruins, listening to one of the most high-energy songs in the game, and making turns that are actually pretty tricky is one really good time. 32. Piranha Plant Slide. Of all the ways they could have adapted an underground level into a track, this is by far the coolest. Just like the original Mario Bros, you start by going down a tunnel, but now it's flooded and full of piranha plants. The rushing water keeps it fast-paced throughout, the giant piranha plant you can bounce off of is sick, and it ends by launching you up to ground level and through very familiar castle set pieces. This feels like a classic Super Mario Bros. Level turned into a racetrack, and I frickin' love it. 31. Bowser Castle 3. This remake looks good. They went all out here and it shows. It's kinda hard to believe this is the only classic Bowser course in the game, but they picked my personal favorite from the Super Nintendo and made it better than ever. The way they handled the retro route splits is really innovative, clearly showing you all your options and making you either take a slower route or risk getting hit by a spurt of lava. But riding up the walls at the end has got to be my favorite part, and the thwomps you can trick off of right before the finish line are a very nice touch. 30. Sunshine Airport. You don't spend much time in the actual airport, but those places are boring as shit. I'd much rather weave through actual airplanes and take off into the sky with them. Now, once you're up there, it's just one big zero-gravity turn, and the way down is just a linear glide, but that's really the only thing holding this one back. 29. Bangkok Rush. The best city track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, because it barely even feels like one. It's like if you put Shy Guy Bazaar from Mario Kart 7 on steroids. The race starts off making you drive through shallow water and trick off these dormant boats, which is probably the most unique section of any of these city tracks, and it really set the stage. There's quirky ideas like this thrown at you the whole way through. A rail system that runs over most of the basic road parts, these tents to bounce off of, and a glider part with options and a nice shortcut. 28. Cloud Top Cruise. This one's a modern take on Sky Garden mixed with a Bowser airship level, a combo that works fantastically. So many of these top half tracks do a great job of not even feeling like a racetrack. You're just traversing these gorgeous Mario-inspired worlds. The only part of this one that I don't really like is the storm section, but once you come out of it, there's a nice little leaf shortcut that makes it all better. 27. Waluigi Stadium. My favorite track from Double Dash comes back and has way more to offer. There's added zero-gravity routes in the latter half of the stage, a really fun cut past this dirt that saves quite a few seconds, and I mean, look at it, it's beautiful. 26. Animal Crossing. They could not have translated this series to a track any better. You got pretty much all the staples. The Able Sisters, the museum, KK playing his guitar, Nook's Cranny, Rossetti popping up out of nowhere, Brewster, and different villagers cheering you on as you glide through town. The changing seasons each time you play with the festive new colors that come with them make this a feel-good track unlike any other, which perfectly suits the Animal Crossing series. 25. Dragon Driftway. They ain't lying. This one has some of the most clean-feeling drifts in the entire game. I'm running out of adjectives here, but one look at this course and you'll realize why. An insane amount of background detail and a phenomenal fusion of Chinese culture in the Mario universe. I love how Lakitu's like the king of karate too. I couldn't be the king of karate.
No, but you could be king of condos.
24. Mute City. Speaking of these other franchises getting impeccable tracks, they did not disappoint with F-Zero. It stays true to the source material and makes sure you're able to boost through pretty much the entire thing. Through bumpers, boost pads, huge drifts, and the starting line shooting you forward. The shortcut at the end is really fun too. 23. 3DS Rainbow Road. The one everyone wanted to see come back, and they absolutely did it justice. It's a one-lap course, which immediately gives it so much more variety than a lot of the competition, and it also has the nicest looking actual road of any track in the game. The translucent, glossy texture fits it perfectly, and combined with being able to drive on the moon and Saturn's rings, makes this easily the most interesting Rainbow Road in the entire series. The only thing keeping it this low is that there's really no shortcuts, and as someone who plays a lot of Mario Kart, that's something I really value. The original at least had a pretty good one for this last turn, but it's not present here, so that's docking it a little. 22. Wii Rainbow Road. Just barely beating out its 7 counterpart. Back in the day, this was the Rainbow Road, and while I don't like it as much here, since it feels a lot easier than before, it's too good to put any lower. There's some fun new shortcuts, and the remastered song is so nostalgic and caps off the booster course pass in the most harmonious way. 21. Shy Guy Falls. This one's a better Koopa Cape, visually and structurally. Driving up the boost pads to clear the waterfall feels great, and when you finally make it up, you're rewarded by getting to go full speed down the other way. Then the glider part has 2 different routes, and there's a damn good shortcut right at the end that can be done shroomless, and it saves so much time. If you don't know this one yet, you're definitely not going to be able to win this online. Just telling you right now. 20. Ice Ice Outpost. The whole gimmick to this one is that there's 2 routes through pretty much the whole thing, but it also has more shortcuts than almost any other track, and they're all shroomless and require a lot of precision. It's fun to work on them, and when you can finally get them consistently, this track has some of the best flow in the game. Downside? Well, the theming's just okay. This game has some stunning courses, and while this one doesn't look bad, in comparison it kinda is. Substance over style more so than any other track. 19. Coconut Mall.
You just got coconut mauled.
One of the most exciting courses to see make a comeback. Racing around a shopping mall is just as cool as it was back in 2008. The layout's still one of the best in the series, they fixed the cars since it launched, and despite the visuals looking flat like the rest of Wave 1, it fits the indoor mall setting pretty alright. 18. Maple Treeway. I like this one just a hair more than Coconut Mall. They're about the same quality in my eyes, but I love the cozy fall vibe in this one. Riding up tree branches, charging through leaf piles, not knowing what to expect, and also the OG track to have wigglers. That's bonus points right there. 17. Thwomp Ruins. The idea of thwomps being these ancient artifacts and guarding these rundown temples fits really well. And I love how these giant gear things roll after you to open up a shortcut. Feels like an Indiana Jones booby trap, and it makes this temple feel a lot more dangerous and mysterious. Also, the layout's just fun, with 2 shroomless cuts that take some practice to master. 16. DK Summit. This one adapts to Mario Kart 8 so well. With half-pipes galore, a shroomless gap jump that I can actually perform, and snowboarding Shy Guys, this one always puts a smile on my face. 15. DK Mountain. This thing is more pissed off than it's ever been, and I really don't know why, because this remaster is absolutely perfect. Such a good course, and I'm so glad it got in. The gap cut works sensationally, the rickety bridge at the end is nerve-wracking as all hell, and one of those falling rocks actually hit me, what the f***? 14. Toad Harbor. The way this lived-in feeling beach town is morphed into a racetrack is better than any of the city tracks could dream of. It's just so nice to look at, gives me good summertime vibes, and there's so many very natural-looking alternate routes that feel really good to take. 13. Dolphin Shoals. This one has to be the most chill vibe in the entire game. From dolphins hopping through these rings with you, to all these different routes you can take in the pipe section, and spamming trick while you ride the back of an eel, it's one of the most gratifying layouts in the game, and it has one of the most graphically stunning moments in the entire Mario series, even 10 years after release. 12. Music Park. Every band kid's dream. The song is fire, and the way the instruments add to it as you ride along them is such a cool way to incorporate them. And these piranha plants just can't get enough of it, man. Also, the gliding section is once again great. There's these big-ass music notes hopping around, and you gotta avoid them. There's even some pretty solid shroomless cuts. They're not that hard, but it's a nice bonus and an otherwise excellent course. 11. DK Jungle. The newer Donkey Kong Country games are some of my personal favorites, and it captures the essence of those flawlessly, way more than the other DK tracks. It also has a little bit of everything, from letting you race deep in the jungle, past the Kong hut avoiding tiki enemies, into a golden banana temple, and finally through the skies with a bunch of screaming pillar enemies. It's so heavily themed and just feels good to drive, especially with 2 really crisp shortcuts. 10. Piranha Plant Cove. This one took a little while to grow on me, but I've come to really enjoy it. Once again, the vibes are on point. This nighttime ancient tiki island setting mixed with an underwater eel cove and a fucking shipwreck give it such an adventurous feel, and the music only further solidifies that. This has to be one of my favorite songs in the whole game, and maybe that's because I haven't listened to it 8,000 times yet, but it goes hard. It also has a ton of shortcuts that don't seem intended, but they all take advantage of the fact that underwater makes you fall slower, and feel very smooth when performed correctly. 9. Bowser's Castle. The best and most menacing castle we've ever seen from Bowser, and that includes the mainline games. We've seen giant Bowser statues that affect the stage before, but this one literally smacks the road and makes the whole thing wobble. And if you're not careful, it'll flatten you too. There's also big statues of him right in the entrance that shoot lasers, giant fireballs and swinging spike balls to avoid, and massive rocks that want to ruin your day right at the end. And the music. It's an absolute headbanger that rocks out. Probably the most fitting track this one could have, and it really makes it feel more threatening. 8. Big Blue, the F-Zero track. It keeps you constantly boosting forward just like the other one, but now is one big lap that feels 10 times bigger and better. To start, the gravity is way floatier in this one, kinda like Sky High Sunday. And here, that can be used to take all kinds of shortcuts between paths, which are my personal favorite type of shortcut. It's such an action-packed course, and while all these rankings have been for 150cc, I gotta point out that this one especially is an absolute blast at 200. 7. Ninja Hideaway. This one takes you through a Japanese-style dojo, and it has one of the most unique structures in the entire game, which made it confusing as hell the first time through, but I've come to really appreciate its boldness. There's split routes through basically the entire thing, and through different glider sections and platforms falling, you have plenty of opportunities to switch between them, but you don't always get to choose, which adds another layer of complexity to it. It's kinda like Ice Ice Outpost, but they don't run alongside each other. Instead, they're top and bottom, and they look way more organic. 6. Yoshi's Island. Another sensational new track to come from the Booster Course Pass. They matched the art style from the Yoshi's Island game flawlessly, and the classic theme is reimagined in the most Mario Kart 8 way ever, and I don't think there's a better compliment than that. Layout-wise, it feels smooth as butter to drive, and I'm a sucker for innovative shortcuts, as well as shit to do while you're gliding. So this one at the end is a dream come true. It makes this final stretch so chaotic, since hitting it gives everyone behind you access to it, and if you miss it in first, you could be the only one not taking it. This whole track is just perfect, but it still just barely missed the top 5 somehow. 5. Yoshi Circuit. Probably my favorite layout in the game. 1, because it's shaped like Yoshi, and 2, because there's constantly really good feeling turns and never a dull moment. Tons of grass cuts, one of the most iconic shortcuts in the history of Mario Kart, and it's shaped like Yoshi. Oh, and the shape of it is actually the same as like a silhouette of Yoshi as well. Oh, and did I mention it was shaped like Yoshi? 4. Squeaky Clean Sprint. My favorite new track in the Booster Course Pass. I've always loved levels that are just a big house. Everyday objects being interacted with in a completely different way is always a fun concept. And it works surprisingly well in this bathroom setting too. You're driving through sinks, tricking off sponges, getting sucked down a drain, gliding over a toilet. It sounds pretty weird, but trust me, it's such a smooth track to play through. The best part is without a doubt the branching glider paths. It's done better in this stage than any of the others, and it's not close. When you're flying over the toilet in laps 2 and 3, you can trick off the water it's spraying to launch yourself to this path up here. And from there, there's like 5 different route options. You can stay low, take one of these side routes that are slightly faster, or try for this really high one that I think is faster, but is definitely more fun. This might be the best music in the game, too. It's such a happy and upbeat track that always lifts my spirits. 3. Ribbon Road. Yeah, I prefer the giant bedroom to the giant bathroom, but not by much. The actual Ribbon Road is super fun to drive on. You can trick everywhere, and these shortcut ramps off to the side are so obvious, but so freaking hard to time right, and I'm always up for the challenge. The big shroom cut at the end of the race is the right amount of difficult and rewarding. Every bend in this one feels great to drift, and the scenery is A+. 2. Hyrule Circuit. Nintendo did such a great job transitioning their other IPs into racetracks, but none were done better than The Legend of Zelda. I'm not even that big of a fan of the series, and even I can appreciate how faithful this is. Piranha plants were replaced with Deku Babas, the coins rupees, and my favorite inclusion, the iconic Zelda secret jingle. This is the most unique shortcut in the game. Having to hit all 3 of these bumpers is tough, but damn is it a cool way to incorporate that. And boosting off the Master Sword to finish it off is just And there's another really satisfying shroomless cut right at the end that saves a pretty big turn. But it's still not as good as number 1. The best track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is 1. Mount Wario, baby! No, not like that, stop. This was the easiest track for me to place. It does the one lap concept better than any other track, and it's not particularly close. Right off the bat, it has you jump out of a f***ing airplane and land on the top of a snowy mountain that you basically just ski down. Every lap takes you through a completely different feeling part of this mountain. You start on the icy tips, work your way through a dam, then drive through a brief clump of trees that leads to a more conventional ski slope. All of it feels masterfully crafted, and it gets a perfect score in every single area. Layout, immaculate. Visuals, it's Mario Kart 8. Beautiful. Shortcuts, you betcha. Something to do while you're gliding? Yep. Exciting music to tie it all together? Don't even get me started. There isn't a thing I would change about this course, and despite the track count doubling over the past couple years, nothing's come close to topping this. And no video's taken me quite this long to make, so I'd really appreciate if you drop it one of these to help it get in front of more people. Mankalor, thank you so much for your help with this, dude. I've been watching your content for years now, and it really was an honor to have you.
Thanks for inviting me on, Jeremy. Glad to give some of my insight on some of these tracks.
You're the best, man. Hope to have you again soon. And guys, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. Go check out Mankalor's channel for more incredible Mario Kart content, or check out this video of mine. And have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see you later.